can work, and we try to motivate people and send some journalists abroad to get experience. And in this way, these formats of the media, they change, and people phone and say, please help us with materials. We want to write about other things. We want to create quality materials. Please help us find materials for publications. That's why the main conclusion about the work, this is the answer from the Ukraine Crisis Media Center. So this should be a comprehensive approach to the work of regional offices. So now I invite the first speaker who wants to. So please, I give the floor to our speakers. Please, Diana. Good afternoon, everyone. Diana Dutsyk, Executive Director of the public organization called Detector Media. So I will be speaking not only on behalf of my organization, but as a journalist. I worked for many years as a journalist, and our projects, they are for journalists as well. So I will express some criticism. You said about dinosaurs, but this is a mild form. What we see and what we have been seeing in the regional media, this is a sad picture. And there is some sort of degradation. So it is not developing, it is in degradation, but there are some exceptions, but we do not have many good examples. So we monitor regional broadcasters and also public broadcasting, and our colleagues from the Institute of Mass Information and from the institute named after Hlib Holovchenko, they monitor printed and online media. And I would like to divide my thesis in several sections. First, about the content, about the quality of regional media. So the picture is sad, and this is about TV, printed media, and online news outlets. So the basic problems that exist, there is deterioration of quality. The literacy is not really good, and journalists do not present their materials properly. We see incompetence in basic issues. Young and experienced journalists come, and the salaries are low, and inexperienced journalists, students work there, and the quality of education is also rather low. And this is one more problem. People do not understand basic things, how the institutions of the state function. And when they do not know these basic things, it is impossible to speak about serious research and analysis about reforms, whether they move in the right direction. They are just not able to do this, unfortunately. Another issue, and this is ethics. I was really surprised, unpleasantly, because I hear often from the regional journalists that we cannot deal with important topics because we lack motivation. And motivation, they mean material stimulus. So they want to have grants, and they will write about important topics. So if you don't pay, we won't write about important topics, they say. And this is the way to nowhere. And when I became a journalist, when I chose this profession, I understood the mission of this profession. When the person chooses the profession of a journalist and then say that they lack motivation to write about important topic, I want to ask what this person is doing in this profession. So we should raise these issues about morality and ethics in the profession. This issue is now marginalized. So what I said about content, I see that there is a problem, such as economic problem, and this economic problem, it creates many other problems. This is dependence on local oligarchs, local owners, and also from some big oligarchs in the East. We understand that the majority of media outlets are the property of former Party of Regions leaders, and also there is not a good tradition. So we carried out a monitoring in 8 regions, and we see that the journalists continue to highlight the topics. They speak about local authority only in a good way. They provide non-critical information about officials. The materials are not well balanced about local power, and they also serve the interests of their owners, and it shows. And from one side, we understand this because who pays, they order the music. But from the other side, we believe that in this aspect, they should find compromises and they should think more about these issues. What I want to say is that one more aspect. We carry out monitoring and we do it continuously for a long time. And now our organization started a 2-year project supported by Visegrad Foundation, and it is directed to support regional publishing houses and in Donetsk and Lugansk Oblast, and we announced a contest, and we have to select about 40 editorial offices in order to provide the complex support for them, and we will assess their needs. This is not about content only. There can be consultations to change the design of the site, about the management, consultations about those issues that need to be resolved. So what we faced at the first stage, at the stage of selection, we proposed this for free to them, and we are ready to help them, to work with them more on site, to bring international experts. So what we face, what situation we face. So there is a conservative view. They say, what will it change? Our salaries won't go up because of this. So you just came and then you will go away and we will remain with the salaries that are really low. What we can do with this? How can we change the situation and this perception of people who work in this profession in the regions? How to change their attitude towards profession and to what is going on in the country? This is a difficult process, I believe, and here there will be enough work for everyone who are here and even those who are not here. So we should do it all together. That's what I wanted to say about the main problems that I see now. And if you have questions, please.
I would like to make one comment what to do with this. All of us know that in order to do in regions, we should invite, for example, 40%, but only 15% come. This, what to do with this? We should give emotions. We have checked this ourselves. When first you forcefully persuade those persons to come, you invite them, you ask them, but when our participants went to Poland, and when they see the results of the process which happened which started 20 years ago, then the chief editor finally recognized his role, how influential he is in this life. Next speaker, please. Institute of Mass Information, my name is Olga Shalaiska. I would like to speak in not so broad terms. I will be speaking narrower. We support freelancers, bloggers, and ordinary journalists who our editorial sent to ATO zone, for example, without armed vests. And now they come to us and consult where to get armed vests and to get briefings. As far as I remember, our partners had a project with changing some educational courses in universities. It was some public awareness project. This is a case study when we conducted training for people who were going to ATO area, and the journalists were asked by the instructor, by a trainer, what is the basic law which protect you when you are at the warfare. We are not talking about professionalism of journalists, we are talking about them, that they are like blind kittens. And this is not only about NGOs' poor performance. Journalist may be not very literate, but he or she should know his or her mission. And what is the basis? But this is lacking. The basis is lacking. Something should be done by us. We should put our joint efforts and brief journalists about the legislation, and rather we should also to do some global efforts. The second idea is positive. I can share the achievements of our project when we worked with investigative journalists, bloggers in regions. They are becoming journalists. They didn't used to be journalists. They are very motivated, absolutely motivated people because they are working in towns and they investigate corruption. They know all prices, how hospitals buy, how administrations buy. They are not plenty, they are few, about 20 people all over Ukraine. But we had a discussion yesterday. We tried to understand how many investigative journalists we have in Ukraine. They are less than 100. This is talking to us that the decentralization to investigate where the local budget funds will be used efficiently, or they will be siphoned off to the pockets of local authorities. This is the question for institutions responsible for decentralization. We should also focus on local mass media, not only on local self-governments. This is the second problem, the second idea I wanted to talk about, and this concerns editorials. Institute of Mass Information researched into media situation, and I would like to tell you that what I see from reading newspapers, from researches and surveys, we have been visiting regions, and we have also one survey which we conducted among clients in our database. Number one question is how to write projects for grants. What this means: people want to gain money, they want to earn. We are giving mini grants for journalists, for investigative journalism. Internews in Ukraine, Institute of Media Development, they give money to regions. The question is how to take these grants. And I'm surprised when I'm writing applications for grants. How can you write articles in mass media if you can't write applications for grant? Well, there is specifics of applications for grants, but maybe it is worth concentrating on education, which we should disseminate in regions. We should create critical mass of people having skills, not for them to come to Kiev and work here, but for them to stay in regions and work there. We have been maintaining this context by all our projects and all our efforts and means. The question is where this connection gets broken. There is no motivation, no knowledge, no understanding if at this roundtable discussion we can have a checklist, then we would find this link which is broken in this connection, and then chief editors who we see here among the panelists, they can give their recommendations, and possibly we can give birth to some joint project. Someone will give support, someone will train, but in an integrated fashion. We should do this not in a discrete manner. This is an interesting topic, I think, the one which we focus on today. Yes, sometimes we do the same things in regions, but maybe we should coordinate our efforts among us. As concerns grants, we have a solidarity fund for one project, which wanted to give $20,000 to local newspapers, but applications for grant failed, so no documents were provided when application was formed, and no grant was received as a result. I'd like to comment how it happens on local level. I sometimes motivate and encourage local journalists and editors to do something. I tell them where you can get money, grants, without selling your honest position, and when I send them links to tenders for honest journalists, and I also offer them free of charge consultations, they do not respond to my calls. This is a kind of a wall because people are complaining on local level, and when I tell them to try for the first time, second time, third time, maybe you will fail 3 times, but on the fourth time you will not fail. If you offer support, real support to some editorial equipment, money, $20,000, any adequate editorial values is here. You can see him on panel is beside me, a chief editor of one of editorials which leads privatization process. If Ms. Verigina is offered some grant, I'm sure she will get people for applying for grants. I'm Oleksandr Diachenko. I'm a lawyer of Association of editorial of periodical press. My first thesis is editorials differ. Some editorials maybe will just stop existence because of reforms, but there are editorials which have been working on business basis, and they efficiently use every opportunity. So we should search for adequate editorials, but also we should launch adequate offers. Why they do not want to be trained? If you provide trainings to journalists or editors, you should explain why they need these trainings. For example, today our office holds training in Mykolaiv on the land reform, and we start our training why you journalists should understand the land reform, because this is a slogan, because all politicians will be speculating on this topic, and the one who will be writing about this topic and the newspaper writing on this topic will be on top of demand. If we are talking about our problems, of course, you hold good events in some hotels, at least 4-star hotels, and then an expert from region, this person thinks that you want to use him or her when she gets in these luxury conditions. Let's talk about the events held on regular basis, on daily basis.
Ну, з приводу локацій.
You are a lawyer. Well, about the locations. Locations should be first convenient in the scope of budget, and all the rest of aspects differ. When we conduct trainings, for example, like this one on land reform, of course, I go to state authorities, and we hold the trainings at their venues. Of course, I like this free of charge locations, so you also can offer me your venue. to raise the topic, you should explain to journalists why they should write just on this topic. We are talking about crisis. It is very popular word, but everyone understands this word in different terms. As a representative of regional organization and for our association, this is the lack of funds and restructuring. The topic of today's training, today's briefing is regional media of Ukraine, current challenges, new opportunities for survival crisis. Someone will see the threats and someone will see the benefits in any crisis. So for those who like to enjoy opportunities in any crisis, reforms are for them. Among our projects, we have the project reforming editorials, and we have 5 pilot editorials, and they will become very efficient editorials at the end of the project. Soon, reforms are being hampered, and we write some changes to the laws on communal newspapers. In the process of reforms, 1/3 of newspapers started reforming process. The largest problem to be addressed is the lack of transparency of the process. Unfortunately, the State Committee on Broadcasting and TV and other institutions, they do not provide information on the reforms, and then nobody knows what is happening, and this is large threat upon the reform in some regions. Just regional newspapers can be closed and nobody will even know, because there is no tracing that some regions at the end finally may have no regional mass media at all. And besides this law, we also address 2 other important issues on press. This is legislation on language and draft law of committee on culture and spirituality. Half of editions should be in Ukrainian according to some regional specifics. In some regions, newspapers can be just closed because they were issued in some other languages, and also promotion of regional press and mass media. We are developing the concept. One of the main lines is to improve postal delivery of newspapers, because Ukrposhta now demonstrate very poor performance delivering newspapers to population. For us, the main goal is to find what donors want of us, what is the demand in Ukraine, and what editorials want. Any activity which bring no income and no salaries to the staff is not useful for business, and it will stop its existence. That's all.
Good afternoon. Olga Trufanova, Executive Director of Regional Press Development Institute. I will speak Russian. So we touched upon the topic of destatization and we more specialize on teaching investigative journalists. We work with regional media and we are involved in the process. And it happens so that now we lack support in the process of de-statization. Those who really want to do something, they locally want to. There is a processes that do not allow this process of de-statization to be developed properly, and there is lack of legal and consultative assistance. And we are now ahead, and our lawyers try to provide such assistance. We understand that there are editorial offices that want to be trained, and there are training courses, and we see lack of donor support for de-statization. Sometimes they provide direct assistance in the region, but we cannot get this assistance. And together with our colleagues, we wanted to create a comprehensive project that would include consultations, trainings, and individual work to but we do not see the interest and about low media literacy. But we see the interest of regional journalists in our trainings. Some people leave profession, but some people go to other regions, but there are always people who are ready to study. So we should not stop, but we should not say that people do not want to be trained and to get information. That's what I wanted to say. Who wants to continue? Good afternoon, Yevhen Zaslavskyi, Foundation of Development of the Media. I don't want to say about the crisis. I believe that we are in the process of development. I was the journalist in the regions, and the situation changes. I believe that we move step by step. We are moving forward, and the regions differ a lot. There are regions where there are a lot of media outlets, but it is impossible to work if you are independent journalist, for example, Dnipropetrovsk region. And there are regions that are lack of money, but there are Frankivsk, Lutsk, Rivne, and there are great editorials, and they create national projects, and everyone wants to read them. And in Lviv and Kharkiv, they also have their cool editorial offices, and it is worth working with them and to learn from them. And we work with the big organizations and with hyperlocal media, Yambylsky project, dirigible, and we now it is frozen, but we got the experience and we continue our work. And there are 20,000 population in the town, and you use all the opportunities and editors from Kiev and journalists from the regions and local journalists and local people who try to earn on advertisement. We should get this experience and spread it. So I continue what Olga said about the school of regional journalists. This is storytelling, video materials, law, SMM, photo, and monetization, development of projects, fundraising, how to earn an advertisement, how to earn an announcement. So this is a managerial block for managers. We have 500 applications. This is 50 people per place. So people want to be trained, they want to learn, and we have about 10 people for a place for the exchange program. And journalists can go to our partner editorial office and they work there for some time, and we send instructors there, and they really want to get informed. And come there, they create infographics, they create videos, then journalists go back to the editorials and they will hold post-training for their staff. So this is comprehensive work. So you train a person, and then you should verify whether they use these new formats. We stimulate people to hold this post-training and provide materials in order that they did it. And we verify these events, whether they are held. So I do not see a crisis here. I believe we should just work more. And each region has its specificity, and it should be taken into account, and we should work, but we know that in some regions we have lack of resources, and we should help them. Kostiantyn Kvurt, Internews Ukraine. And I would like to agree with my colleagues in many things. First, so there is not a big crisis, but there is a revolution in the country. Revolution continues, and someone have to leave profession, and it means change. And those who oppose changes, they will leave this profession, and even those who are among us. So we cannot preserve stability in times of revolution. And these changes, these are painful changes, but they should happen. Do we have an alternative to this revolution and to this stability? Yes. And this is death. Death in the hugs of Russian world. And what Ukraine is trying to do, Ukraine tried to fight it. And those who want to oppose, they will leave the market sooner or later. All those discussions about that there will be no audience for the readers in our region, or there won't be a demand for journalist investigations because we lack audience. This is not true. These are thoughts and viruses that are provided to us by Russians or oligarchs. So we should understand this. Second, the thing Tatiana said, and I want to support her, we should, and I believe we started it, we should agree among ourselves why we do it. And we implement projects and we go into details. I didn't want to say about minor things, but sometimes we deal only with these minor things. And a lot of us forget about the mission, or we didn't express this mission. Why do we do it? We do this in order that Ukrainians, our children, had efficient state. And the example of an efficiency, 2005, the budget of state TV and radio broadcasting, 60 million hryvnias were allocated for the budget of this organization. Then it was 300 million. So 2007, the budget was 500 million. So this is $100 million were allocated for the development of information market in this country. At the same time, the advertisement market was about 1 billion hryvnias. So we had only $100 million for the development of information market, and they were spent for some shows, some we just lose our information war with Russia. And now we face the situation of inefficient state, but the alternative to this inefficient state is only another state, so Russia, and we should take this into account, and we should remember about elections. So I said about money and something about the mission, but let's speak about money more. So European practice is like this. Regional market has 20 or 40% of advertisement, and they are in the regions. And in Ukraine, they have about 5%. And you know that it will be close to zero. And some big oligarch groups, they agreed on this long ago, and they do everything in order to concentrate this advertisement pie in their hands. And what we do to oppose this? We do not do enough. And there was an attempt to ban the universal service at the end of 2016, and we didn't address this issue properly because there was an agreement between politicians and oligarchs. They wanted that people paid for content, but content is not regulated, and this is content in oligarch channels, and people pay for this, and we should make conclusions out of it. And if we speak about positive things and what we can do in this situation, I would propose the following. First, by all forces, we should support the development of public broadcasting, because today, when we fight oligarchs, this is our natural counterpart, and we should agree with this. Then we should ban political advertisement. Editorials, they will be against this. And press will be against this. Everyone will be against this. But we are in the position, we do not depend on political advertisement. We can allow ourselves to speak about it, and the values are higher. Those political forces that now go to power, they use political advertisement in order to, in the result, in election campaigns that will be manipulative and dishonest, they will bring pro-Russian political forces, and we do not need this. And the third thing, the third idea that should be promoted by all forces, this is the ban to offshore companies to be the owners of Ukrainian media. So we should ban this. Will we have a lot of supporters? But we should still speak about it, and we should not give up on this. Thank you. So this is a bright speech. I would like to thank Ukraine Crisis Media Center for the process that was in Mykolaiv. And this organization understand what should be done locally. And we had positive experience of cooperation with the U.S. Embassy in 2005 when we launched an efficient training for editors. This was the editor school that provided training for many people. And some people were against destatization and reforming. And this happened then. And we would like to thank Ukraine Crisis Media Center for their courage. And we speak openly about many problems today. And I, as a representative of the local media, and a journalist, it is easy for me to speak about it. You speak about it on a theoretic basis, and we work with it every day practically. And Oleksandr, I know exactly the figure of those editorials that are at the first stage of reforming, and these are 244. And those organizations who are responsible for this in the country, they do not know this figure. This figure exists, and you made mistake in the figure. It is present in the on the site of the Cabinet of Ministers, and this was a provision of the Cabinet of Ministers. And I said not about the list of the first stage organizations. The first stage didn't happen. I said who did these things. So we survived this stage. We had such lawyers that provided information, and then it happened so that draft laws contained mistakes, and we have some erroneous law that cannot be implemented. We had enough time. So going back, what we can speak now openly, we should say that we should coordinate our efforts when you go to the regions and say about other people that they are wrong, and we search for different people who are not able to organize any event, but they represent your organization. Sometimes I want to say, let's coordinate our efforts, and I agree with Kostiantyn, because this is really important. Without it, we cannot do anything. So we think that that is a good example to find coordination. And not only values, but also understanding. We have a simple thing that we need in order to understand what mass media communication we create. If these are Russian media, so in this case, we will move in this direction. If we are speaking about mass communication, so I would like to show this book, OSCE book. So this is freedom of the media, and we understand this. Now we see the freedom of the media. So how? So mass communication. So we should have clear understanding how we translate this term. And I would like to, I asked foreign counterparts whether we develop mass media, whether we develop communication, and why in this text we write about the development of the mass media. This is the concept of Russians, and we should speak about it openly, because there is a third year of war in the country. We should coordinate our efforts. This is mass media, and if we negotiate on this and agree on this, that would be better. So the U.S. Embassy, they have the Fund of Development of what? And taxpayers of the United States, they provide for this, and this situation happened in Moscow as well, and we lost democratic Russia because someone thought that this is not important. This is really important today, and this is what should be done in post-Soviet area. And what we mean when we say journalism, if we say that journalists are free and independent and responsible, we should understand the importance of ethics and integration to International Federation of Journalists. And there should be the possibility to focus on the main topics. And the majority of our organizations said that we do not need this. And I know some organizations who say, where did you see this? There's no such thing in the world. And I go to the press club in the United States, and what I see there, there is a oath of the reporter, and if we have values, we should at least speak about them. And if you train people on professional issues, we should clearly establish the terms. So we had a sad incident at the conference of OSCE concerning press, and we spoke about media literacy, whether it is one word or two words. If we know English, media education, these are two words in all the words, in all the languages. And here there is Ukrainian, but this is not the topic of today's discussion. And how we can negotiate things if we didn't identify the terms? If we say that media literacy is absent and we are losing our audience because thanks to Ukraine Crisis Media Center, we were able to see. After coming from Poland, one of the editors said that I thought that newspaper business is absent. I agreed to go to Poland, but I believe that my newspaper will be closed in several years. And then he said that he didn't understand what media business is, including newspaper business, because he has never seen this before. So in some aspects, we should work and negotiate and identify and create a glossary of terms on, and there are 37 speakers that come to regional centers from different programs, and in some settlements there are no journalists at all, and sometimes they do not have journalists at all in some regions. So whether we can do it, and ending this block, I want to ask, you said what we do at the request of donors or someone else. We should say that without our joint action and without the support of national interests, no one except us can create this model of information consciousness in our fight for independence. And when we speak in the South about something that people do not understand, then Russia will come and will solve any issue with the use of their resources. So we may laugh that they cannot submit for grants, and Russians are still more they are closer to them, they understand them better. So I agree that in the regions that are a lot of examples of quality journalism than in the center. So there are successful newspapers, and sometimes you even surprise how people can create such a quality paper in the regions, and then they ask, please show to us a daily paper that can be present in the regions daily. So we have a partner relationship, and we should build this partner relationship between regions and national mass media, because all of them are now mass media means. So you have a special mission because you train future journalists.
Let's return from global ideological problems to closer to our topic. We are giving the floor to the next speaker. Good afternoon. My name is Yulia Panchenko. I represent Resource Center GURT. I am an editor of our portal and about my impressions of work with regional journalists, I can give the following comments. First, there are projects. We have projects focused on working with regional journalists. The second source of information is our portal. Information at our portal, majority of it comes as a feedback from our audience, from regions. And the third source, direct interaction with regional journalists. When we have correspondence, we send mails, we disseminate our press releases so that they know about our events or they know some of our materials. I would like to tell about our project. Its title is Information for Conscious Actions. It is supported by the U.S. Embassy Fund of Mass Media Development, and its duration ends in September. We address Eastern region where 30 journalists are trained by us. We organize trainings for them and consultations. We provide them to these journalists. These 30 journalists write about the situations and events they see, and we publish them online. We post their articles. Working with regional journalists, we see some vivid aspects. First, undoubtedly, regional mass media are very important in forming of public opinions. We often see situations. People think that regional mass media sources better understand local situations, but regional mass media sources sometimes are biased because editorial is owned to some businessman, some owner, and there is some editorial policy. And even when a journalist understands the situation, this journalist is afraid to lose his job, and he or she can't write true information. And the second problem is lack of educational background. Not all educational institutions in Ukraine provide high quality journalistic education. In the cities, in the towns, I mean towns, small town journalists, they do not have access to high quality education which is provided in cities. Many journalists have willingness and they search for opportunities to get training, and there is also such problem as inertia. No enthusiasm. Editorials work according to the old schemes and do not like to change their patterns of operation. Some press releases which we send, they can be just published without any comments. Not often we are addressed for specification. There was one case when we held recently our event in Kiev, and we sent a press release to a regional mass media, and there was an error. The editorial wrote that this training was conducted in their city, but not in Kiev. What national media wrote about your event? It was a specific event on professional vocational education. I think as far as I understand, that everything is so good with national mass media, and there are some bad regional newspapers. We just do not focus on national mass media sources today, but regional mass media sources wrote about your event. I do not want to say that regional newspapers are worse than national ones. When we work directly with journalists from regions, and when they come to our sites, sometimes in Kiev and sometimes in locally, and I'd like to mention that working and trying to do something in a city where you feel at least many colleagues who work the same way and you do not feel lonely. But if a person works in hostile environment which opposing and resisting the reform, this person really feels that his or her work is difficult. We should pay attention to this, and we should rely on these journalists who are in opposition. I think that in regions we have many cases of good mass media sources in Kharkiv, in Lviv, and other cities. We take ideas from them, we take information on local events from them, and at the same time, the strongest mass media sources located in the center in Kiev. Some journalists start their careers at local level, and then they move to Kiev, and some national mass media sources they also may cover regions such as Hromadske radio, and we can provide more stable funding if we look on other mass media sources. Our funding will look as quite stable, and there are many regional journalists who cooperate with us. They could have worked in regions. They are very high quality journalists. Some of them are from Crimea, from occupied territories of Donetsk and Lugansk region. They are people who try to find better life because they are deprived of the opportunity to work at their native places. And what are the problems is with professionalism of journalism is just lack of legislation compliance locally, and also lack of education. This is Ukrainian specifics, and also challenges related to global problems, which are the seminal countries, such as most of profits of mass media goes to social networks. You know how high profits earn Google or Facebook, and these profits are under-received by mass media sources. So this is a challenge for mass media. Social media challenges them. But mass media should try to make some efforts. If we dig deeper, we will find historic problem. It is a market which came to Ukraine, and how society can live when market is real, when it is reality. And we can see that there are many persons who have already adjusted to market environment. They have lots of money and they can influence mass media policy. We can't remain just observers. We should do something. Maybe our actions are not proportional to the global scenes around us. I think the situation is not that bad. There are cases of not bad practices as well. When someone is doing his or her job at rather professional level, this is the best proof, the best evidence that lack of professionalism can be coped with. There are also skill sharing events and educational events. They can help to raise professionalism of journalists, and regional journalists also should be involved, and they are involved in this education activities. Some journalists, some editorials are already ready and willing, and some of them are in the process of understanding the importance of education. There are attempts to engage also older generation. Of course, younger journalists, they are ready to change, and the older generation is more rigid and conservative, that they already have some experience, but they also should be addressed, because they will be working for 10 or 15 future years, and they are also in demand by their audience. Situation with regional mass media is not tragic. Besides these people, nobody else can better tell what is happening locally. The situation would not change immediately, but we should put efforts to change the situation. These journalists, they are capable to build their audience, but they should be trained in monetizing this audience. We see that in recent years, groups in Facebook and Contact mass media who accumulated very large regional audiences, and they communicate information of what is happening at neighboring streets. The editor of regional mass media sources, they get just 5,600 hryvnia monthly salary, while military men get 8,000 salaries. This is a problem of local editorial, that he works in a newspaper which is not capable to survive. If a person is talented, this person goes to Facebook, they create their own their websites. I ask not to work in kitchens. These people goes around the world asking for money. This is not the right way. Do not protect them. Why shouldn't I protect them? Why we decided that young policemen will get 8,000 salaries? Because we want young policemen to earn their salaries in fair manner. We have 500 editors, and we should give salaries not to young frontier men of 9,000. Till our frontiermen, our guardmen, and our policemen, until unless they get high salaries, until editors of district newspapers get sufficient salaries, sufficient for survival, our country would not have prospects for dignified future. The law is not complied with, the rights are not exercised in the country. Formally, our stands should be joined. What our mission is, whether our mission is to oversee, to be watchdogs over policemen, over frontiermen. If we just give salaries to these 500 editors of local newspapers, thank you for your stand, thank you for voicing out it. I would like to give the floor to Mr. Roman, and then we will have Zhytomyr by Skype. Thank you. I will continue the discussion. Roman Vybranovsky from UCMC. You can see on the screen what we are doing.
So we have been doing it for a year, and these are things that can be useful. And I would like to say to Kostiantyn, there are some things on the channels that are financed by pro-government structures, and in the regions people are the same. So why do we have a crisis? And this is in the regions and in Kiev, and the problem not in journalists. Why journalists can not earn? Because to local or central journalists, some oligarchs provide money, and those journalists who try to earn by themselves, for them it is difficult to compete with those who just paid by oligarchs. How to work in this situation? Our experience, maybe it is not well formulated concerning the rules, but this is like a religious story. Some people believe in standards in ethics. So fake it till you make it. So they do it according to standards, and their work is of quality. We do not have long-term planning, but if everything is okay with the country, so they will earn. If our country develops, they will be able to earn, and I do not agree that a person in the region can do something through Facebook, but if they invest in this, it will be possible. I have one printed report we made how to provide people with information about reforms. And we believe that this issue concerns not only the journalists and the media. Of course, they should provide quality information, but also officials at the central and local level should provide proper information, and activists also should participate both at state and local level. And for many activists, they use negative information, and this fleeing of Yanukovych that became a problem for some activists because they just want to speak about negative things. So people should cooperate better. We can find healthy people among officials and in organizations that are involved in anti-corruption action, and they should work more. And also those who work in the media, and Mr. Diachenko knows what I'm saying. When we came to speak about reforms, people said maybe it is interesting, for example, energy reform, but subsidy scheme and nothing changed. It is interesting what you say about healthcare reform, but now nothing happens in the regions. So one of my teachers said, what should one do in order to create an anarchist? Buy a book about anarchists. So if people see the problem, then they will have this book and read it. And in Ternopil, they have actions near city administration, and they address this issue during the session. And some people in the regions, they can earn only a bag of buckwheat and nothing else, and no one can help them. So farmers earn from this, and local administration benefit from it, but this is an interesting topic for discussion. So some reforms, they are not implemented locally, and it is difficult to fight Musi and Ms. Bogomolets. But they didn't start to speak with the heads of regional and local hospitals. They do not know what is going on there. So when this will be implemented, people will try to work, and those who will lose, they will say about killing of Ukrainian nation, they will speak about it at local level, and then they will say, tell us what is going on, and then there will be an issue for our organizations. So For us, it is important to change and to feel what people need locally, because they work on trust and they believe that something will happen positive in the nearest future. We would like to thank Roman, because quality of work is important and people demand this quality. Irina Zhurbayu, UCMC. I work on communicating decentralization reform. And why do we have this gap between Kiev and the regions? This is the problem of overall state. So all the processes previously happened in Kiev, and regions, they lacked not only money, but also all the decisions were taken in Kiev. And when we go there, where processes happen, and we are interested in these processes, there are many problems, but there is a systemic change that can have a reverse effect, and maybe more resources will be in the regions, and we should provide for this, and there should be a matrix of decentralized state created. There should be money there in the regions, and journalists, even investigative journalists, didn't follow this money. And there was an issue raised by civil society at local level. We do not know where this money goes, and there are no NGOs and local investigative journalists who can do it. And in many situations, this is impartiality of individuals, but there should be systemic things that support this process, because we face the situation when decentralization is the goal and the means, and people should go to the regions, and also this is a subject for communication of reforms. And here we should say that this is a difficult topic for the media. It is costly. It is not a topic that can be communicated from far. People should go on site. Journalists should see the situation by their own eyes. And this topic is still under-communicated. And for example, these provocations, some people try to replace decentralization by federalization, and in 2015 changes to constitution were voted for about local government in separate regions, and after this we just responded on negative things that are promoted by Russia, and there are fake communities that are spreading, and there are many negative things that are highlighted, not positive ones. So a lot of actors are now in the sphere of communication of decentralization, and UCMC have clear position. So there shouldn't be paid journalism in this. So local papers should present materials, and you know that there are low salaries of journalists at regional level. We try to establish different algorithms. these are press tours and training component, 1-day training, and we do not. So journalists go on site and create the materials, and also there are contests for journalists, and here is natural selection, and the most quality work win, and new standards are created, and it should be like waves of these contests, and journalists, if they create quality materials, they can specialize in some topics, and there will be a pool of journalists created. And what we plan to do after a national contest, we will do also at the contests at the regional level, and there will be specialized contests in different topics. And here there is a dilemma. There should be investigative journalism contest, and there we will see where money goes, and when the problems are revealed, maybe there will be some bad image attributed to reform, but we should create an image that decentralization create opportunities, but implementation is different. So if money is stolen somewhere, it doesn't mean that this is on a systemic level. These are such some separate instances. So there should be proper approach to communication of decentralization. Otherwise, we won't achieve good results. A year ago, we had different views on decentralization, and I propose to think that in some regions, decentralization will be like feudalization. And here we may say clearly that today it doesn't work properly. If we had some information campaign in the regions, people would get information how it should be done. And in our press club, we speak about some reforms, and we have record number of communities and newspapers that are reformed, and condominia that are created in the city. And there is a young mayor. He is 35 years of age, and he worked in the IT company, and he never worked in state institutions. But the money that community got from decentralization, this is 1.5 million of hryvnias, but he put it in the bank, and he does not provide it to the economy of the town. And when we say about it, he says that he has problems with journalists, that journalists are bad. They are not bad. They know how to do it better, and they know how to control. And the Western donors, they want to find out what is going on in Mykolaiv. And he says, I have problems with journalists, and he can say about low quality of education of journalists, about low level of training for journalists. And this is Mykolaiv, where we can provide openness and transparency. And somewhere in the north of Odessa region, the situation is really terrible. And here we should reconcile with the fact that there is no panacea. So there will be some negative things, but Russian world, it works daily, and it can deprive us of some other part of territory. So this is the issue of dynamics. So there should be a step-by-step process, not a leap. Because otherwise, this will be a fantasy. So Irina only said about the format of cooperation with the media, and decentralization is a separate issue. One more thing I wanted to say, there are different cases, and together with Mr. Dutsyk, we discussed the situation near Lviv. There is an example of feudalism. Two brothers that are known there, they wanted to create a community in order to get all the business in one community, and attention is brought to this topic, and this is the issue not only for the media but also for people that are not voiceless, and the media should communicate information properly to them. So we do not have a task of highlighting. So in the regional media, we do not highlight everything. We just live in communities, and I thank you for this colossal information about household tariffs. And due to our TV channel, there was a tariff of 15 established by a committee, and now it's 5.65. So there are no such examples in Kiev. So the tariff was established properly by deputies and the executive committee. So we are not people who highlight something. We influence things. So what is important is that in the framework of country, there are good examples, and it shows that this is realistic, and this is something succeeded in tariffs, others succeeded in breaking this feudalism, and this horizontal communication is important. When in Mykolaiv Oblast, in the north of Odessa, they understand how in Khersonsk Oblast they prevented some negative things, and this break this monopoly of one algorithm.
I would like to draw your attention for several minutes. We are giving the floor to Irina Vazhilova, top manager of Zhytomyr Association of Journalists and Advertisers. Good afternoon. Lot have been said about reforms and professionalism of regional mass media sources, and it would be hard to add something, but I'd like to say that regional mass media sources are still alive. Although the situation is dramatic, we hope that they will work in future, continue their work. We have been working for 16 years on reforms of regional mass media and compliance with standards in journalism. We know the problems, we know the professionalism of journalists, of course, means playing according to the rules of the games. We have been monitoring for 3 years professionalism standards, and me and the expert of Philip Orlik Institute, and we see that the situation is extremely difficult. On the 5 score scale, the general score is up to 4 scores. In regional centers, local mass media demonstrate the indicators of reforms as it is named, it is called privatization. The most of our newspapers, they joined the first stage of reforms. I'd like to agree with other panelists that many editors-in-chief, they are ready to receive money but not to earn money. And now the challenge is how to make a newspaper efficient, and they will be earning this money since then. The problem will be resolved. I think the one who can survive will survive, and who can't survive will be replaced with other newspapers. There is competitive environment in some district of our region. Other newspapers enter the market at district level. Some editors-in-chief, they panic, but this is not bad. This forces them to search for new formats which are relevant in market environment. I'd like to say that the support provided to NGOs working with regional mass media sources is rather significant. Although we do not achieve at once the results which we want to get, but we see how we move towards our expected final results. And earlier the situation was when there was not so much interest to our events, and now privatization process.
Де було до роздержавлення і все це затихало, всі були дуже задоволені тим, що от будуть вибори, і це роздержавлення воно нікому не.
The elections will demonstrate that the newspapers will remain. The editors think so, that they will remain getting funding. And now they understand this is a final decision, and they will be forced to earn money somehow. So editors-in-chief of newspapers, they seek trainings themselves, trainings on how to earn money. Our NGO is working in this domain, and we work with journalists. In 1991, many newspapers appeared at local market, and some people, not professional people, they entered journalism and they remain in the market. That is why we need to provide training all the time, and we have been addressing this need in our activities all the time. The thing is that we should provide not only theoretical knowledge. It is very important to give good examples to local district newspapers, and we want to go and see local newspaper projects because Zhytomyr region is not abundant in pilot projects so much as Lviv region is, but this would be also useful. New project will commence soon. Moreover, we continue working new newspapers in local higher educational institutions. We had only 2 journalism faculties, And those people who are not practitioners, they try to provide trainings, and we see that the quality of that staff which receive this training is poor. So I provided research on the disciplines being delivered in these institutions. The situation will be better, and we will be working with our local Zhytomyr University and Donetsk University, mass media faculty, to train the trainers, to organize trainings for trainers, so they will get the opportunity to know disciplines which they really need. And I'd like also to mention the problem. I don't know how to name them. They are not subject to mass media law. De facto, they have more influence on the audience. Their audiences are larger, and they form more opinions, more attitudes, and have more impact on local audience, and have more users, and not good situation. We had the project, and this concerns improvement of journalistic standards, compliance with journalistic standards. We worked on this, and we monitored the situation, how in internet editions they will be implementing the standards. Thank you. We're short of time, 30 seconds left. The management and their editors said just this is waste. Forget about the standards. We continue working according to our old practices. Thank you for your contribution to our discussion. I noted some items to use further in my work. We are short of time, dear colleagues. Then we will have a coffee break. Let's start the second panel. Let's start with you, Miss Yulia and Miss Natalia. Not summarizing. We should endure working in this domain, should meet and find some formats. When there is a will, we are not to invent another one, but we all understand that we are competitors, we are rivals to some extent. We struggle for the same resources, but still we are few in the scope of this country. There is room for everyone, and everyone will have the areas to work on, and we should meet and coordinate efforts and to globally discuss the questions and definitions. not to talk only about media competence, literacy, but also about media hygiene. We understand, as if understand that there are oases in regions. If we can have a joint meeting at Mykolaiv, let's do that. Well, we understand this, and we understand systemic crisis. Who understand this as an opportunity, who understand this as the way to no existence, whatever. When we seek topics for regional mass media, this does not mean that they are second grade. With some special needs, or maybe if we use this diplomatic term, we can just organize meeting for regional editions, and in 90% we will get to know said information. Let's wait for 3 minutes, and they will have regional editorials by Skype connection, Miss Tatiana. And if, as concerns motivation, let's just send this appeal to our colleagues. Our colleagues should feel this is time not to simulate work, but to work indeed.
Я думаю, що не менш така тема, яка чіпає.
So this is an important topic that really in our heads and souls. And the second issue, how our work is seen in the regions, about the formats, whether they are efficient.
Те питання, як ми його ставимо, чому.
So the question we raise, whether regional media are ready to form an agenda at the moment, and how they view their own problems. And Natalia is going to tell us about this topic. So we start now. Natalia Sverigina, Zaporizhska Pravda newspaper, deputy chief editor. So we will mark 100 years of our newspaper. It was created by local council, Oleksandrivska Council of Zaporizhia. These were the representatives of the activist movement, and this is history of our newspaper, and we survived a lot of different moments. This was a communist newspaper, and recently there was a new team that was created because the newspaper was at the brink of extinction, and it was nearly dead. And it is the only regional Ukrainian paper in the Zaporizhia region, and all others are in Russian. And we have problems because the audience mainly speak Russian, and media, they meet the needs of their audience, and they provide their materials in Russian. And also the other problem is that so there is an influence of a powerful oligarch there, and he has information resources there, and maybe it would be a fantasy, but some kiosks were closed where central papers were sold, and Zaporizhska Pravda also would have been sold there. And now Zaporizhska Pravda is not sold in kiosk. It is sold only under subscription, and it could be sold in the post offices, but here a problem appeared. They accept this newspaper, but there are 650 posts of Ukrposhta in the region, but they sold only 10 newspapers. And the audience is mainly Russian-speaking, and we try to compete for the audience with them, but we are not competitors because we provide different content. Our competitors, they have 100,000 papers that they just send to their subscribers, and it is really difficult to live in these conditions because we have only 20,000 copies of the paper. And you know that our Zaporizhska Oblast, it is close to the ATO zone, and we should create Ukrainian-speaking environment there. And there is a need in Ukrainian paper such as ours, and our people, they collect money, and they subscribe to our newspaper. This is 260 hryvnias per year, but people still cannot afford it. And I addressed the committee at the Supreme Council, and And Ms. Sumar, she heard me, and there will be some support for such newspapers as ours. And in Mykolaiv and Odessa, the situation is the same. And we met with our colleague at the meeting, and I raised this issue at the state level. We need a support. We need support, and you remember when in the past they said that theater will disappear when movie appears, and now some people say that printed media will die out, but we believe that it will continue its development. And Oleksandr, he praised us, and in the project we participate in, the Dream Team, it does not envisage some money allocations, but this is the support we needed, and the Oblast Council decided to ban our newspaper, and we held some actions to support our newspaper, and our colleagues supported us and attracted the attention of international community to support us, and it provided big motivation for the further development of our newspaper. And when we have some questions, we can address to specialists that can provide us with advice. We need really good advice that we use in practice, and we continue for the second year, and it is really difficult in these conditions. And some people said that people want to earn. Our staff gets 700 hryvnias per month, and the minimum wage is 3,200, and some people are surprised why people continue to work, but we believe that this is our war, this is our trenches, and here we hold our positions and we hold the ground. So these are the things we face. So it is not to bring tears to your eyes. We believe in our victory, and as Roman said, the situation is difficult, but we will hold, and we hope that Ukrainian state will develop and everything will be okay. There are good people who help us with advice how to develop, and we plan to increase our presence on the internet. We want to have our TV channel on the internet, and I want to tell you about the crisis. I think that today, for me, this is my personal belief, there is a crisis of responsibility. We had a discussion with our colleagues what a journalist should do, whether he should have his civil position, or is he just a mirror that reflects the situation. And I was surprised when I reminded to them renowned phrase of the poet, the Russian poet, that you may not be a poet, but you should be citizen first. So some people said that journalists, they should be outside, they should hold their position, and together with NGOs that work in our field and in our professional community, we should not be aside, but we should be tolerant. But healthcare workers say that tolerance is when you are infected and do not resist infection. But we should form our views, and we should create agenda for the local media. what we do, we survive and we support people because they should hold on, and we have a project initiated by Zaporizhska Pravda newspaper, and all the journalists at the local level are interested, in local organization of the National Union of Journalists. They are also interested, and we announced an action in order to support defenders of our state, and this is a large-scale project, and people collect some things for the servicemen, and also some creative people also help, and together with the volunteers we created a project, Love Wins it is called, and we have one volunteer. She has a shop for weddings, and they create some attire for the brides of the servicemen. And also we have an action, social action. We have a lot of children from low-income families, children with special needs, IDP children, and children of servicemen who graduated from school this year. And we held an action, and I visited first Ukraine Crisis Media Center, and then I heard about what is going on here, and we made a project together with the tailors, and it was for the to create some attires for the those who finished schools, the orphans who finished schools, and we proposed to residents of Zaporizhia, those people who have these attires, these clothes. So we created a project for children who leave school this year. We implemented this idea at the local level, and this can be implemented, and this is useful.
As concerns training of experts, it is not surprising that after the education is received, a person comes to a company and starts training from the beginning, because it trains to practice. There was one also case in our project. We have just commenced implementation. Associations of communities now are launched, and how we want to work in this sense. I had negotiations with Denis Karatenko, head of community. We want to implement posts for local journalists. They will be trained. We receive information from them and use our newspaper and our website to disseminate positive experience, to share our skills. Thank you. Unfortunately, we are limited by time. My name is Yulia Sukharevskaya. I'm a trainer, and why I'm here, I do not like when regional TV channels and newspapers and websites, when they are named regional as province, in the bad sense of this word. I was working 10 years in region. I was first a news reporter, and now I work with regional editors and journalists. We are actively cooperating in training and search for information. I learned during this time the three problems. First is low qualifications of staff. The second is lack of resources. And the third problem is lack of strategy of broadcasting and no use of modern trends in TV broadcasting. All of you heard that I will take many students than one very expensive journalist. This is the practice because the most skillful and bold journalists, they go to the capital, and the editorial may be like an affiliate of second year students of university. These journalists as if understand something and as if have some knowledge. The second group is when the specialists who as if knows what is multimedia, but they're afraid of this world. The thing is in qualification, very low percentage of graduates when they come to work understand how to do something in practice. I don't know what is the situation in newspapers, but the situation is like this on TV channels that graduates I will add about education. I envy regional mass media that most projects of Ukrainian and international scope are focused on regional mass media sources. Many organizations perform trainings in regions and in Kiev for them. Where editors and managers of inter alia regional TV channels, if they see that there is some swamp and no good specialists, then maybe some trainer may come and work with the editorial staff in general, where some sport journalists they will be proactive. This also can cover the entire editorial. For an editorial, this would be not only training, but this team building which they really need and dream about. Sometimes low qualification is the problem of lack of resources. The first stage is internal audit. The days of should be changed. This specialist should address everyone, and people would get their days off and good schedules, and the life of editorial will become more structured. Yes, sometimes graduates of universities do not understand the processes. They should go to other channels and see how they work. We are here mostly from provinces, and you can go to excursions with checklists of questions because national practices could be used in regional media in their spheres. And when resources are lacked, and when you have reshuffles of staff, you should address the owner or use other options such as grant programs. This is the way to address technical resource improvement. The third, no strategy of development of broadcasting. Sometimes top management do not understand what they want to achieve. They have been just making news reports, but they lack feedback from audience. They may lack standards. Why they for successful game, the players should understand the rules of the game. Whether the regional mass media can form agenda at regional levels, of course they can, because they differ from national channels by their close location to their viewers. The audience should become their partners. They should want the changes for all the programs, either for love stories or fostering of children. Thank you. We give 2 minutes to our colleagues. Severodonetsk, you are welcome. Good afternoon. Anna Diachenko, chief editor of Vesti. I feel it was very interesting discussion. It was interesting to observe your discussion, what we are skillful in and where we lack qualification. As concerns forming of agenda of social life and other things in Lugansk region, we have such a unique situation. It is unique because due to the conflict we have lost infrastructure of production and infrastructure of dissemination of our newspapers. There are monopolies in informing of the population. Communal mass media sources, the procedure of communicating information creates a situation when both sides are not satisfied with the situation. Both mass media and population are not satisfied. If we take such example of Azot enterprise, several months the staff have not been paid salaries, so they can't pay for getting their local newspapers. They can't subscribe because of the lack of money in families. As concerns prohibition on advertising, if political advertising is allowed, then conditional independence of mass media then independent mass media sources will die because independent newspapers in qualitative sense unfortunately in Lugansk region are unavailable. There are just some persons who work via internet in this or that way. They try to operate and they are dependent on sponsors or authorities, local authorities. Unfortunately, the situation is like this. Thank you. Thank you. I should interrupt you. We are lacking time. Thank you for voicing out your stand. I am giving the floor to Mykolaiv. Good afternoon. My name is Oleg, and I am an editor of the investigative journalism department. Our work is specific. There were projects on investigative journalists. We understand what you are doing. Tell us about your problems, please. We are non-profit organization. We develop according to international patterns. We work according to our independent plans. This give us independence. We do not depend on local politicians or businessmen. On the other side, we do not have a financial plan. We are always at risk to not to have funding. But we can voice out any stance, but this is a problem of all mass media all over Ukraine. They are either funded by politicians or businesses, or they exist thanks to substandard materials which are biased, so-called jeans materials. We have our editorial policy, our standards in place. So in this aspect we can talk about our success. What else can I say? Talking about whether we form local agenda. I think that it is possible when there is high quality journalistic materials. Then it is possible to introduce changes in the society, but this is rare cases. As usual, only superfluous materials are published, some sensations, and this only emphasizes the problems of journalism. If journalism is professional, then we would form agenda of a local society. Now we are giving 2 minutes to Mariupol. Maybe you want to tell something, Miss Tina Ilsen. Thank you. I was so I will be brief. It is very interesting for me to listen to this discussion, and I understand that very many things have been in progress, and influential donors and countries do things in Ukraine. Estonia, for us, for Estonia, Ukraine is the most important country for our partnership, but please do not quote me. You know that the chairman of European Union Council is the president. Well, also moderators also give tone our presidency during our presidency support to the countries which pursue European integration course is important. We support these countries and we try to find more information, we search for information so that Estonia directly or in partnership with the USA and the European Union plan for the next 2-year period. We want to provide information what Ukraine needs indeed, what is happening in reality in Ukraine, how to work involving local partners. The project which we commence it would be a pilot project. Parameters are not large, but Estonian joke is if we start, we will not stop. So pilot project will commence now. We try to help regions, not only journalists and editorials, but also civil society. I hope this project will expand and we will get large funds for high importance of this project. I mentioned that panelists talked on what we should focus on. I will answer your questions later on. Now we are giving 2 minutes to Mariupol. Please introduce yourself. You have 2 minutes. I will be brief. My name is Ganna Murlikina. I'm a chief editor of City Sites Network, talking about regional mass media for us as a rather successful commercial project, working as an independent mass media source in regions. Our main problem is staff, not only trainings is in question. We feel crisis of people working according to the standards in our profession. We should be competitive, and we compete with those mass media sources who are funded by oligarchs. We can't provide such competitive conditions, such salaries as are provided in this paid by oligarchs mass media sources. And the other thing is that people from Eastern region, professionals from Eastern regions, they move to other regions. Trainings is a good thing, but we have nobody to train. All the rest of things are manageable, are doable. Thank you. Dear colleagues from Kherson, we are sorry we can't give you air time. Thank you everyone for coming to our event.